Well, the world is on fire. Hello, and welcome to the Friday exclusive, commercial-free, just a chance for us to just digest what happened during the week and also bring some new thought. As I was talking today to Pat at the end of the show and said, how do you feel after the end of this week? Because we have delved into deep state, we have delved into possible civil war, the media, how high tech is manipulating things, and the truth even of our history. It's been a really rough week, and it's going to take all of us to come together, and I don't know how to do that. Dinesh D'Souza was on today, and he said to me that I don't feel we have a united culture anymore. It's our history, the American history of our founders and our Constitution, Bill of Rights. That doesn't seem to be the history of the left. That doesn't necessarily mean of the Democrats and liberals, but it does seem to be that that's not their flag on the left. So how do you bring us together? Donald Trump said that he was working on some things for education, which I applaud and I think is great. However, I don't want education to be run out of Washington, D.C. We have an incredible opportunity right now in the next administration to reset the table. That's what the left wants to do, and it's not going to be towards freedom. How do we reset the table? The Republicans have in past always given us the same old, and not willing to really look at the bite into the power that needs to happen. Libertarians are friends. In fact, when I say I vote the ticket, I don't vote Republican. My ticket would be Libertarian. I pick and choose. If I don't know the name, I'll go with a Libertarian. But I pick and choose the Republicans that I would vote for. Everyone in the media seemed to be so wrapped up in how there has to be a woman running for president. A woman would change everything, they said. We have to have a woman. Well, there is a woman that's running for president. She's a wife. She's a mother of two. She has an academic career. She's been a psychology professor at Clemson University since 2006. She's not a Republican. Why isn't anyone covering her? Well, we are. And she is joining us now, Dr. Jo Jersensen. She's the Libertarian Party presidential nominee. Hi, Jo. How are you? May I call you Jo?
Oh, sure. Thanks so much. May I call you Glenn?
Yes, you may. Yes, you may. So we are in a world of hurt as a nation, and I think it is because we have spent 100 years violating everything that our founders put into place and just growing this giant state. Where are we now, do you think, and how do we get out of it?
You're absolutely right. We are in trouble. And what's scary is when I was on the VP ticket in 1996, I was talking about how government was too big, too bossy, too nosy, too intrusive, and we had to do something about it. And now we've got a debt that's 5 times the size. And you know, it's funny, Glenn, I don't know if you remember, but back in the early 90s, we were so outraged at the congressional barbershop, right? That on taxpayer dollars, the congressman got their haircut for free, right? And now we're in the age of Nancy Pelosi getting a haircut, and we don't even get a haircut.
Right.
You know, I'm longing for the good old days when at least everybody got to have a haircut. You know,
right.
It seems like paying for congresspeople's haircuts now seems trivial compared to what we have now when we're all under house arrest and we can't go out and get our haircut, but they can.
So let's go to coronavirus. First of all, do you believe the coronavirus is real and it was a pandemic? And tell me where you are, first of all, on the virus itself.
Well, I believe there is such a virus as the coronavirus. However, I think that the government failure is even more real than the virus because they handled it completely wrong.
Okay, so the way they handled it, let's get into specifics. What did they do wrong?
The first thing Donald Trump did wrong is he didn't clear the path through the FDA. The FDA blocked testing kits from getting to our country.
Correct.
And there were dozens of testing kits that we could have gotten to, and the FDA originally only approved 2 of them. Meanwhile, Southeast Asia, they got ahead in testing,
Right.
and they were able to, by finding out who needed to stay home and who could go out and work, they didn't have to shut down their economy
Right.
and lose tens of millions of jobs. And then Donald Trump got on stage with Dr. Fauci saying, if you don't have symptoms, you don't need to get tested. Well, at the time they knew, the numbers at the time were that over half the people who had the virus didn't have symptoms at all. So that's when you need to test. Otherwise, you could have the virus and be out spreading it and not know it.
Okay, so I agree. And I think our biggest mistake was not letting the free market in the first place. That's just not America. We opened the free market and things changed. Now we're sitting here and our country, first of all, the Democrats were begging for presidential juice to come in and run their states, which was unbelievable to me, because they think he's a dictator. It almost looks like it was a setup, but they became very dictatorial in states. Tell me how the power, the balance of power has gone through all of this.
Well, I still think they followed Donald Trump's lead, though, because he was originally saying that everybody needed to stay home. But also, I'd like to point out, we still can't get all the testing kits. In fact, my communications director did some investigation on her own and tried to get some kits. And they said, no, we're not allowed to sell those in the U.S. and Canada. And also, where she lives, you have to go to the doctor to get tested. Again, that's ridiculous. So we still haven't even cleared the first step in getting ahead of this.
So do you think, I read an article today that said the panic of the pandemic. I don't feel any panic from anybody. I feel real annoyance from a lot of people. And I think everyone has destroyed their credibility. When the CDC comes out and said this mask, not even an N95 mask, this mask is more powerful than probably even a vaccine. You have no credibility left.
I know. I could not agree with you more. My first thought when I read that headline was, okay, so maybe we shouldn't get the flu shot. Maybe we just need to wear masks for the next 60 years, for the rest of our lives. That makes absolutely no sense. And, you talk about how everybody is in a quandary over this. And I know, since I teach psychology, and by the way, I only want to point out, nobody knows the difference between a professor and a senior lecturer. I'm actually a senior lecturer. The students don't know the difference, but my bosses do, so I thought I should say that. But I teach social psychology as one of the classes, and humans are social animals. And, we talk about sometimes people being a loner. Well, the loner gene has pretty much gone out of the gene pool, because if you were a loner, you didn't mate, you didn't have children. So people are social animals, and we've seen just depression go up, suicide, abuse, drug abuse, alcoholism. It's just ridiculous. My
30-year-old daughter said to me, we were talking about her putting her kids in school, and she said, I don't understand. There is no science that's being discussed at this level because of the psychology, the damage being done to the children. And no one's talking about that. And I look at my grandchildren and my teenage children, and especially with my teenage children, that's your high school experience is something that is just emblazoned in your head. They don't have one. They don't have one. All of this time, all of the learning, all of the mistakes, all of the things that happen in high school is being taken away. How does this shape our children? It's like a big experiment that nobody's even talking about.
Right, absolutely. And I'm so glad. My school is actually opening up next week. I got to admit, it's been nice on the campaign trail that I've been able to tour and teach remotely. However, I'm so glad for the students that they'll be able to get some kind of college experience because, it's not all just book learning. It's how you get along with people. It's, learning leadership by having experience with college groups as opposed to just reading a textbook.
So, help me out on this. I don't want, and I really thought that one of my biggest concerns about Donald Trump was that he would be more FDR than FDR in a crisis. And it has blown me away that the states are begging for it and he hasn't given it to them. He hasn't said, he's not marching in with federal troops where these riots are. He's not dictating that states either open up or close. He's leaving those constitutionally the way they are. But how do we, without violating the Constitution, do we have a responsibility to the citizens that live in those states? And an easier one than COVID is these fires, the people burning things down to the ground and the riots that have been going on. They are calling for the end of the United States of America. They are celebrating the killing of cops. I don't think it has anything to do with actual Black Lives Matter. It has everything to do with Black Lives Matter, Inc. It may have started as a protest, but this is all Antifa. Is there a role for the federal government when the local government will not do anything to protect citizens and their property?
Well, at some point. Now, of course, the libertarian position is that crime is a local issue.
Right.
That that it's up to the police, the mayor, the city council, everybody else, the voters, and that government shouldn't get involved. And I would suggest that part of our problem is that the federal government has gotten involved by handing out the free tanks and tear gas and all of that and escalated the problem. In the olden days, people, we knew, the beat cop knew everybody by name. Mm-hmm. We knew our police officers, and you see on the sides of the car, you've got community to protect and serve, and there was kind of a community feeling. And then we have the federal government step in and hand out all these tanks and basically militarize the police. And now the police just, psychologically have a different feeling. Now it's kind of an us versus them, and it's a real shame. And what's a real shame is, once again, this is the federal government stepping in where it shouldn't. Because you think about it, if some local city had a referendum that asked, okay, would you like your taxes increased so that our police department can buy a tank? Most people would say, no, don't increase my taxes for that. I'd rather go out to an extra nice dinner or something. But instead, the federal government, as it always does, takes our money and then buys stuff we don't want and then, dangles it in front of our police departments. Now, what police department is going to say, no, don't give us free stuff? Their mentality is, well, I don't want the people in Alabama to get it, or the people in Wyoming, wherever, those are our tax dollars, so we want it. And so then we're end up having our money spent where we don't want it. And that's true in crime. It's true in education. I was a little worried about your intro, Glenn, when you were talking about Donald Trump in education, and then you brought in, the magic words, but the federal government should not be involved.
No, I've talked to Betsy DeVos several times on this program, and every time I say, abolish the Department of Education. What are you guys doing to abolish the Department of Education? Because I think Betsy DeVos actually lives in that space much more than the government space. I don't know if that's the reflection of the Donald Trump administration, but I do believe that's what she would do, is cut all ties to the federal government and all funding, which is the solution to most of our school problems.
Oh, and many of our problems, because the federal government is running everything from afar and trying to have a one size fits all that doesn't fit. And it's funny that you mentioned that you think that she would like to cut ties. We have had libertarians run for office on the platform that once elected, they would abolish the office. So,
Right.
get me into office so I can get rid of it. And that's what we'd like to do. And yes, the Department of Education would be right there at the top, because the needs of, for instance, rural Appalachia, much different than downtown New York City, than other cities around, and we shouldn't have a one size fits all. And even Trump talking about how students should go back to school, that should be a local decision made by parents, teachers, and students, because
But he has
communities.
left that as a local. He has left that as a local.
Well,
issue.
I heard him encouraging.
There's a difference between
schools to open.
Yeah, there's a difference between encouraging and then saying, as the president, you will.
And he wasn't tying he wasn't tying funds to it. I understood he was threatening funds.
Oh, right. Well, I haven't seen that, but I think everybody has a right to say what they believe is right and wrong.
And you know what? And I agree that the president is in a leadership role,
right.
And I think the president should be out there sending a message. I just don't want any funds tied to it.
Yeah, unfortunately, funds are tied to everything now.
Yes.
So tell me, what would you do with? Well, let's go back to Antifa on the streets. Those who are calling for revolution. Those are calling for an end to the Constitution and the state. Those who are using Marxist tactics and openly being Marxist and calling for the overthrow of the state. At any time in the libertarian view, is there a role to stop that?
Well, of course, if the governors ask for it, of course, if the states ask for it. And yes, if it looks like they're starting to overturn the federal government. Right now, it appears to be more local. And Donald Trump has every right to go in and protect federal property. And if they start going after federal property. And I agree with you, Glenn, things have changed, because when I first started talking about this, I would talk about, the peaceful protesters with their First Amendment right.
Correct.
And how there's a few opportunists who are coming in hijacking the movement, but now it has been changing more to rioting.
Correct.
And I'm hoping that
it is hurting the civil rights process. It is separating us. It's dividing us. It's using that, and anybody who's not paying attention, if they try to tie the plight of what real African Americans and real people are saying about cops and those real issues, and if you tie those to what they're doing, you've caused so much damage in the civil rights cause, because no one wants to stand with people throwing Molotov cocktails. No, but that's not an American ideal.
Right. And it's so sad to see people, first of all, they're using fascist tactics. They are using basically eminent domain, taking, even with the Chaz Chop area, they were, eminent domain. They were putting up their own borders. They were using guns, even though they say they're against guns. So the message has not been clear, or at best contradictory, let's say. And it's just a shame to see that basically, and stepping back, like a bigger step back to Black Lives Matter, because I have been criticized for talking with local. And by the way, let me point out, no, I didn't talk with the Marxist headquarters group, but just with local Black Lives Matter leaders who weren't affiliated with them. We agree on so many things, that we got to get rid of the no-knock raids, that we got to get rid of the racist drug laws, and so we agree on the problem. But it's just, how do you fix it? And it breaks my heart that these people think that the way to fix it is to go get bigger government when big government is the one that caused it.
See, I don't know if that, I will tell you, I don't know if those people are sincere. I've met with local Black Lives Matter people too, and they divorce themselves from all of the, all of the Marxist rhetoric and everything else. They are really looking for someone to listen to them and help. And they don't want anything to do with that. And many of them were swept up early on into it. And then they realized, oh, crap, no, we don't want that. So I believe that actually exists. But I don't believe that those who are spouting Marxism are actually looking for anything other than Marxism. It's like it's cross signal. No, if you accept that they're Marxist, of course they're using eminent domain. Of course they're using the cancel culture. Of course they're, using guns to intimidate. That's what Marxists do.
Yep.
But there's got to be somebody that splits those two apart and says, this group who protests peacefully, that's different. This is a revolutionary front.
Yes. And when I did talk with a local leader, we had a great conversation, and we